I bought a big bag of coleslaw mix. It's just shredded cabbage, and it also came with some shredded purple cabbage and some shredded carrots, and you can mix them together in whatever portions you want. We've already had 2 pounds of it to go with ribs, and I'm going to freeze dry a couple pounds of it. My sister did some cabbage, and it came out amazingly well when it was rehydrated, so I want to try a couple of pounds of it, see how it works. It might be terrible, I might be unhappy with it, but I could always use it in a soup or something because it'll be good for something. So I'm going to go ahead and pour these in the bag and kind of shake it up. And usually when we do our coleslaw, we put this through the food processor to make it a little bit smaller. This time I'm just going to put it directly on the trays like this and see if I'm happy with it later. All right, yeah, that's mixed up pretty well now. I'll load that up with whatever will fit. I'm hoping for 2 pounds, so then I can save 1 pound for another batch of coleslaw to go with some other food. Well, it's that big just to get a pound. So I could go with 2 1-pound trays. What do you think? I think I better stop with that.
I think you better stop with that.
Because that's already... So I'll go with 2 pans that are just 1 pound apiece. Approximately 1 pound. And even though these are bigger pieces, when they're freeze dried, if we want to break them, in fact, some of these littler pieces, thin, long pieces, will be hard not to break when they're freeze dried. Just bagging them is going to break them up. Well, we'll get another tray, we'll get the other pound on there and get them in the freezer for pre-freezing. And if I had the freeze dryer ready, these could go directly into the freeze dryer and just start there. But I'll get both trays same way, and we'll see you when it's time to put stuff on the other 2 trays. So I started the machine about 45 minutes ago to pre-cool. It says that the tray temperature now is about 17 degrees, and the thermometer I have on that's touching the barrel says about -25. More than cold enough to put it in. The 17 is right on the border because I like it to be less than 20 and dropping quickly, so I guess that counts, because by the time I put the food in here it'll have dropped a little bit more, and the food's already very cold. It should be close to 0 right now. Let's go get them and put them in. We're doing the coleslaw mix that I did yesterday, I think. And we're doing some thin sliced beef that I cooked for freeze drying 6 or 7 months ago. Finally getting to it. So let's go get those, get them on trays and get them in. In here I've got the black peppercorn marinade mixed up with some water, some oil and some vinegar according to the directions, though I added a little bit more water and oil because I want it thinner to go with the thin sliced beef. We're going to marinate some of the thin sliced beef in it, and then just a few minutes. Then we'll grill them for a few seconds on each side, and they'll be ready for freeze drying or eating. Sliced boneless beef, and this is only about 4 1/4 pounds, but it'll be enough to get started with to give it a try. It's just nice little slices. You know, if you wanted to make jerky, this might be a great way. You know, it's cut across the grain, which is the way I like to do my jerky. It kind of falls apart more, which is not what they usually want. But anyway, it's very low fat. It's nice little slices. And my plan is to kind of peel each one apart and make sure that they get coated with some of the marinade. I'm going to just start with some of this in there, and I've got more of these packets. So just kind of get each side of them coated. As soon as those are all coated, we'll get them on the grill. So, gonna get them on there fairly close, because it's only gonna take just a very short time on each side. You can see it's almost time to turn the first ones over already. So more of the thin sliced beef that I cooked on the barbecue or on the grill, but this particular cut of beef was a different one. The other one was eye of round that was thin sliced. This one, I don't remember what it was, but it's thicker and it's cut with the grain. So it might be good for fajitas or something like that, or various other things. So I'm thinking on some of the bigger pieces, I'll cut them up more and like little fajita strips. And we did a test of that with some taco seasoning, worked out great. But some of these other ones, the smaller ones, I'm just going to go ahead and leave that size and put them on the pan for pre-freezing. On these bigger ones, yeah, I'll just cut them up a bit and see how we want to use them later. I think I'm just going to do this size because that'll be small enough to go into bags easily. So I'm just going to pre-freeze them in maybe 3 layers on a stack. That should freeze dry well. So next time we'll see these getting ready for the freeze dryer. Tray 1 and 2 are already filled with the coleslaw mix. So tray 3 and 4 are the only ones that I need to fill up right now. And these are some of the thin sliced beef pieces, and I probably have it in the same video, but those are from clear back in September. So I'll get those on here on the 2 trays and figure out how they work. So this is the thin sliced beef that I did months ago. So I'm going to try to get them all crammed on here, even if it's fairly thick, because I want to get this part of this complete. And there's not that much weight of the meat, it's just fairly big size-wise. And I'm going to load up the other tray before I weigh these and then put thermometers in. All right, that's how I'm going to load them. So it's not perfect. These are really full, but that's okay. 1735 and 1451. And we'll tuck a thermometer in there. And hopefully that'll fit in the rack, because that's pretty tall. I'll go get the 2 trays of cabbage, or coleslaw. I didn't want to give these any chance to start thawing, so I just left them in the freezer till the last second. 12:05. Because I do not want them thawing. And 11:94. Because each one of these should have a pound on it before it was frozen. Okay, now over to the freeze dryer. Right, so this batch is a relatively low water batch. The meat is pre-cooked, so a lot of the water is already gone out of it, and these are only 1 pound each, and I usually put 2 to 2.5 pounds on a tray. So this is going to be a low water batch, but it's still going to take a long time because I've piled this stuff so thick. So everything stayed nice and cold, got it in there while it was still nice and frozen. I did not want the coleslaw mix to warm up and get all mushy like cabbage gets when you freeze it and thaw it. I'm hoping this will work out for, what's that stuff called? Coleslaw. I'm hoping the coleslaw mix will work as coleslaw after I rehydrate it. So we'll see in about 2 days, so don't go away. It'll be just a second. On this batch, which batch is this? 621. On this batch, I'm going to do something that I don't know if I've done in a very long time, and certainly not for one of the videos. I'm going to take them out and check them an hour and a half or 2 hours early. Usually, it takes extra time, and we'll go into a little bit of the why in just a minute. So I'm going to bypass the rest of the time. It's got more than an hour and a half. It says the pressure is down at 67. I do not believe that mine is calibrated correctly, because mine's gone negative before, and that's impossible. All of the tray temperatures are about 120 or higher, even the top and bottom one this time. So we'll open the drain valve and we'll get these out and check them. And we will rotate the trays too. And that is a very toasty tray. And it's an even 800. That's only 56 grams worth on there. Well, actually it's less than that because the thermometer's still in there. So it's even less. 793, that's 7 grams difference, and the net weights when I started were identical. So either these weigh less, so had more water than these, or this one still has water to come out. And with natural products and vegetables and stuff, I often find that there's a difference in the batches that seem kind of identical, like 2 bags of peas. You pour a bag of peas on here and a bag of peas on here. They look the same, but they actually have different water content. Now we'll get these back up there. I'm going to put tray 2 at the top. Yeehaw! And take tray 1 and put it down 1 spot. And then tray 3. Again, a very toasty tray. It's almost 130. 1169, 1170. I'll go with 1169 because it's bouncing back and forth. And then tray 4, and this one is cooler, but it's still very warm. It's just under 120, and that's 1076. Okay, I'm going to set those down here for a minute. I'm going to put the plastic disc in the opening for now. Guess I could close the door, but this works fine. So one of the viewers mentioned on the video about cooked chicken, and I had the slabs stacked up, and they said, wouldn't it make sense to rotate them to adjust them so that the bottom ones and they get stirred up and give them a better chance to be exposed to the heat? And absolutely that's true, and I had a really good reason for not doing it. I'm lazy. So ideally, because I am stacking it so high, it would make sense. Okay, so this one was here, and the middle area is going to freeze dry the slowest. So it would make sense to take these, flip these, let's see. So I'd leave these in the same orientation, but take the bottom ones and put them on top. But they're absolutely right, and here's a good example. There's a little bit of ice in the middle layer, and that makes absolute sense that you would have this. So now I can put that on the top. So by taking these, the coldest area is right here between the 2 layers. So if I just switch them, now the part that's the least dry is touching the pan and straight up. These other ones are so thin it's probably not a real big deal. All of them could benefit from that same rotation. So I know that these are not going to be finished yet because of that right there. And there could be more inside here too. I don't feel anything more. So just the 1 spot. Let's get these back into the freeze dryer and discuss the issue with these. Okay, and tray 4. I'm going to leave this down on the bottom because this one has more heating on it. It's a little bit warmer, and this tray really needs that. This is the tray that really needs the additional. So I've got the weights on them right there, but I know positively that tray 3 will not be done. It's not done right now, which means that in 2 hours it's going to have lost weight, and it's going to have to go back in for additional time because I won't know that it's dry. Let's get this restarted and then discuss it just a little bit. I don't have a whiteboard down here, otherwise I'd draw pictures. So I'm going to add more dry time. And on the newer machines it would say extra time or something like that. I don't remember what it says. I did close the drain valve. I'll continue. So this batch has been running for about 26.5 hours. And it would have been done if I had spread the meats and stuff out evenly on the trays. I didn't do a good job of that, so it's going to take longer. I want to mention a little bit about why it takes longer than you think it might. or than you think it should. Think of insulation. If you have light, fluffy insulation, it's preventing the heat from traveling through. With this, it's a similar thing. Like the shredded cabbage, I have a thin layer of shredded cabbage because I only put 1 pound on each tray. Usually I would do 2.5 pounds and just pile it high, which means you would have a layer in here that has no direct radiation or radiant heat hitting it because it's being hidden by all the stuff up here. You have no direct conduction from underneath or radiant from underneath because it's being stopped by the other pieces. And then as they dry out, you actually start to lose the conduction through the material because now it's dry and it doesn't have that mass to help transmit the heat through. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a food scientist, I'm just looking at how the thing functions. By putting as much as I do on the tray over and over, I am making a slower process. So with a light amount, like if I'd just done 4 pounds of shredded cabbage, 1 pound on each tray, it would have been done in probably less than 24 hours. But because I have those thick slabs of meat that were piled really high, some of them are 5 layers deep, well, that really slows down the process. But I don't mind, because if I put 10 pounds in there versus 2.5 pounds, the 2.5 pounds is going to freeze dry much faster. But is it going to be 4 times as fast? Because I can do this batch in 2 days. Can I do the other batch in just a half day? Probably not. It's probably going to take me a whole day. So I might be able to do a batch in 24 hours. And I may not even have to defrost because the ice amount would be low. So maybe I could get 2 of them in 2 days. But I can't get the whole 10 pounds. So I do it this way. I really load it up and I recognize that it's going to take longer. Now, the second part of the problem is it lies to the machine. The machine is using an algorithm, and I'm guessing on part of this because I didn't program it. I don't have the program, but I see how it works. So I can extrapolate or figure out how it's working because of that. So it's using the fact that you're lowering the pressure to a certain amount, you're heating up the material that sublimates the ice out of there and turns it to a vapor, which raises the pressure. And so then it has sensors to know what the temperature and the pressure is. At some point, it's pumping full amounts of heat into it, but it can't raise the pressure, so it must be done. But not if I've lied to it by stuffing a tray this deep with it, and the middle layer, and actually it's about 2/3 of the way down is the coldest spot, not in the middle. That middle layer is insulated so much from the heat, it's taking a ridiculously long time to finish. And that's where stirring them up partway through or rearranging them, as the one viewer suggested I should have, and he's absolutely right, he or she, the viewer's absolutely right. I should have rearranged them. And to rearrange them, I'm best to go take that bottom layer and simply move it to the top to leave them in the same orientation. Yes, because the cold layer is going to be on the bottom of the top part and the top of the bottom part. So if I switch them, now this layer is touching the tray and this one is exposed to the heater above. So that's probably my best bet when I do that. I just give it more time instead because I'm essentially lazy. I could have a second tray and then take the top layer off, put it down, and then take the bottom layer and put it on top. And that would work very well. Hopefully I covered all those parts and it makes sense. But the bottom line is, yes, it takes a lot longer if you overload the tray or load the tray to the maximum. How else are you going to get 8 or 10 pounds in a batch? I don't know what you would put in there that would have a single layer and still have 8 or 10 pounds. So I load them up, I give it the time. Generally everything's done in about 40 hours, plus or minus 10 hours. So 30 to 50 is 90% of the stuff is somewhere between 30 and 50 hours. Works great with that. All right, I'm back. I blew it off last night until the next day, so now it's another day. I didn't want to have to stay up later and take care of it and bag it. It probably was going to be done in just a couple hours. The audio was still garbage here because I still hadn't discovered that I had a broken wire on the microphone. So I'll skip past this and you won't have to listen to all the junk I probably said. And starting with tray 1, which is in the second position now. And it actually has lost nothing. So we're going to go ahead and plan on taking that out. And same thing there. So those two we'll take out and we'll leave them out. Tray 3 was the one that I did find a bit of ice in it. And it did drop. So that's going to be our new starting point on this one. It had gone down 6 grams since the previous check, more than a teaspoon of water. Tray 4, let's see what it did. And that one didn't lose any weight. And leave this one in with the other one so I can bag these at the same time. So I'm going to put tray 4 in there and tray 3 up here. So I've got them in the 2 warmest spots. I have very little doubt that now they're finished, but we're still going to do the 2-hour dry check to be 100% sure, because I don't like to just assume it's done, because it seems like every time I do that with things like this, it comes back to bite me. So we'll give it a couple more hours and then check it again. In the meantime, we'll take care of the coleslaw mix, and I'm going to just bag part of it in Mylar bags. The other part I'm going to just do in Ziplocs, a heavy Ziploc, and I'll still seal them, but I'll keep that for a test, and we'll do some rehydration tests with it to see if you can make coleslaw out of it, or if you just have cabbage that could be used in soup or something. We'll find out. But in the meantime, we'll get this restarted, and then we'll take care of the cabbage. We got the drain valve closed, and I'm going to add more dry time, and it is closed, and continue. And we'll just come back and check the thin sliced beef in a couple hours. Now, let's go take care of the coleslaw. All right. So we have the 2 trays of coleslaw mix, and we'll get the thermometers out of those and get the final weights now. So this was a pound. Okay, this is tray 1, 792. So this was a pound. Now it's 38 grams of coleslaw mix. So just a little over an ounce now. 785, also 38 grams. So these are 38 grams per pound. And I think I'll go ahead and bag it in some half-pound amounts. So I'll keep out a half-pound and bag 3 bags with a half-pound in each. So with this coleslaw mix, I'm going to put it half-pound into a bag. So I've got it labeled for what batch it was, what day it went into the freeze dryer, and then the amount before it was dried, which was a half-pound, and then that it needs about 415 grams of water now. So a half-pound, and that's wrong. Shucks, because that's for the whole pound. I need just half of that, and I'll round it down. So I need about 207 grams of water. Wow, that was close. I'll be right back after I fix these labels. 207 grams of water. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to try it. I think I'm going to try probably ice cold water and maybe with some pickle juice in it to add flavor as it goes back in, and then make coleslaw out of it. So I need about really close to 17 grams of this mix into each bag for the half-pound. It's kind of funny because you can see you're picking it up, but it's so light you really don't feel it. Okay, I'm going to try that with 1/10 of a gram difference and see how that measures out with the other bags, and then I can kind of even them out. Oh yeah, it's half of 38. I need 19 grams, not 17 grams. Sorry about that. So this one still needs almost 2 more grams. I don't use this kind of bag for anything that I plan on storing for any length of time. I do use it for a lot of my sample stuff that is only going to be around for hours or maybe a few days, but if it's going to be around for even weeks, I want the Mylar bags. So I'll leave that one a little bit high. We'll try to get them as even as possible with the remainder of this. I've got these 4 bags within a small fraction of a gram. We'll go ahead and put oxygen absorbers in them and seal them up. And I'll go ahead and put an oxygen absorber in this one too, in case it's a couple of days before I actually do the testing. Because I might not be able to get to it tomorrow. And I certainly don't have time today. Going to be using 300cc oxygen absorbers on these, and we will heat seal them, even this one. So I'm going to just tuck it down the side to make sure that it stays out of the way of the zipper. And then I'll reseal this bag for later, and I'll add one to this. The Mylar bags aren't as staticky as this as far as the food sticking to the bag. We'll get those sealed up. And I think this would be another great one for nitrogen flushing because there's so little actual food here. I mean, it's 19 grams in a bag this size, which means it's all airspace. And vacuuming these probably wouldn't hurt because I will probably crush them up a little bit before I make coleslaw, because we usually don't use that big of pieces. This is just how they came, and I left them. I'll have to turn the control down because this would be so hot it would just melt through this bag. So I'll take care of these first. Nice full seal near the top, so I've got room for more chances. All sealed. And then I will do weights on these when I get the beef out also. Gonna turn the setting way down to 4 on this. That's a lot of stuff in the zipper area, or in the seal area. Yeah, it's all staticky and clinging to the bag. Well, hopefully I can get a seal area on there. And I'll let that cool a few seconds. It looks like we've got a good seal all the way across there. Some food stuck in it, so I'm going to go ahead and add another layer of seal up above that. So I've got a good double seal along there, and hopefully that'll keep the air and moisture out of this well enough until I'm ready to test it in a couple of days. We'll be back with the rest of the beef. It's getting close to 2 hours later, so we'll take them out and check them. It's been an hour and 50 minutes. I don't expect any problem now because I'd given it extra time overnight to make sure that it was dry. The the coleslaw mix with only a pound on a tray was thin enough that it was actually finished at the 26.5-hour mark. It was probably finished before that, but the machine didn't know because it was still driving off more moisture or sublimating more ice out of the meat, especially the one tray that I left really tall. I should have evened it out more, and I knew it. And I also don't mind if it takes extra time with the machine, but less effort on my part. So I just press the button, give it a few more hours, and it's all good. Let's get them out and check them now. So down arrow past the last of that, we'll open the drain valve, and we'll get them out. So tray 3, this was the problem one because it was stacked so high. Well, let's see how it is now. And 1163, no change now. And this other one didn't have any change last time because it wasn't very full to begin with. So it's no change. Now everything's ready. So we'll use no defrost and stop that thing, make it quieter in here. So we're going to put the little baffle into place and get this fan going. The whole load this time was only 5 3/4 pounds, and usually I'm doing 10 or a little bit more. So it's a very low load. It would have been very quick if I'd put it evenly on the trays. Okay, let's get them bagged. We get the thermometers out of these and then get the weights. And they're significantly different amounts on the two trays. So 1154 for tray 3. Tray 4, 1067. This one has almost 1 1/3 of what this has. You can see how high I had it piled. You know, it's 4 layers thick. It's more than 1 inch thick. It's more than I would recommend. So these lost well over half the weight. They were 696 grams total, so almost 1,700 grams, and now it's only 731. So it lost close to 1,000 grams. Anyway, we'll get these bagged, and my hope is that I can fit a ½ pound into one of these bags. A ½ pound is going to be about 97.5 grams. So that was my plan, is about 97.5 grams or 97 grams in each one of these to start with about a ½ pound. If that fits, we'll have 7 bags and a ¼ pound left over to snack or test. Is just tear this out, and then I can stack about 97.7 would be the ideal. So a little over 97 grams on here, and find out what that looks like. And you can tell that these were cooked as 2 different batches. Well, at least I assume we can tell. Anyway, the marinating was different and the cuts of beef was different. So what does it look like to get a ½ pound? And then can we get that in one of the bags? That's pretty close. So this is almost a ½ pound, and I should have no problem getting it in this bag. So I've got it pre-labeled with the batch number and what it is, and I'll add on there what it weighs now, or what it was. Put that it was a ½ pound, and I can also put how much water is out of that. That will need about 129 grams to bring it back to the same hydration level as it was. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to do it at that amount. Depending on the dish, if you're just making some stew or chili or something, you could just chop this up while it's still dry and put it into the pot and use it that way. So that fits really nicely. It'll close easily. It's plenty of room to put them in there without crushing them, and that's what I'm after. That's what I'm going to aim for with each of these. Is I'm going to shoot for about a ½ pound, and then it will need about 129 grams of water. These last bits we can take and do a quick rehydration test and see how those come out. So I got the beef in 7 1-quart bags with about a ½ pound in each bag. And again, ½ pound before it's freeze dried, not after it's freeze dried. After it's freeze dried, it's less than 98 grams. And then I've got the little leftovers, about a ¼ pound in just one of the Ziploc bags, and we'll use that for some taste testing. I'm going to use the 300cc oxygen absorbers. Make sure they drop down the side so I don't end up with them in the zipper. And we'll get one on this one also. We'll get these zippered shut. I still have this turned down from the last thin bag, so we'll go ahead and use it first. And then we'll turn up the temperature, or it's actually, I guess, a timer, not really the temperature. It's how long the power is going through it and heating up the element. All right, so that we'll save for testing. Turn the back up to probably 7. I think it was at 6.5 or 7. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to do is add a gross weight to each bag, and then they'll be ready to put on the shelf. So 124 grams. So as soon as I get all those on there, I'll go ahead and put them on the shelf. And this one's bouncing up between 125 and 126, so I'll use 126. And the coleslaw mix. These will be very light. So the bag and oxygen absorber weighs more than the contents. Okay, now these can go in a bin and on the shelf. So I thought that I was going to rehydrate these just a few days after I put these in these bags, but it's been 10 or 11 weeks now.